Hi, welcome back to penetration testing course. Today we are going to talk about the first phase of penetration testing, that is reconnaissance. So in this, we are going to talk about the introduction to reconnaissance and what are the different tools which are used to gather the information, that is HT-track, Google Drives, the harvesters to collect the email addresses, and we use the Whois website or the Linux inbuilt command to gather more information about the target and netcraft. So, in the to get into the details of this, in most cases, people who attend the penetration testing or ethical hacking workshops or classes have a basic understanding of a few security tools. So typically, these students have used a port scanner to examine a system, or maybe they have used Wireshark to examine network traffic. So some have even played around with exploit tools like Metasploit. So unfortunately, most beginners do not understand how these tools fit into the grand scheme of penetration tests. So as a result, their knowledge is incomplete. So, following a methodology ensures that you have a plan and know what to do next. So, to stress the importance of using and following a methodology, it is often beneficial to describe a scenario that helps demonstrate both the importance of this step, the reconnaissance step, and the value of following a complete methodology when conducting a penetration test. So you just assume that there is a scenario that you are an ethical penetration tester working for a security company, and your boss walks over to your office and hands you a piece of paper uh, that I just got off the phone call with the CEO of the that company, and she wants my best employee to pen test her companies, and that's you. So our legal department will be sending you an email confirming we have all of the proper authorizations and insurance. So you know accepting the job. So he leaves immediately, and you flip over the paper. A single word is written on the paper, that bulb security. So it is a company you have never heard of before, and no other information is written on that particular paper. So then, what to do next? So in the first step to do this is the first step is for any penetration testers is every job is to search about that particular company. So, the more thoroughly you prepare for a task, the more likely you are to succeed. So, the guys who created the backtrack and your Kali Linux are fond of quoting the Abraham Lincoln, who said, "If I had 6 hours to chop down a tree, I would spend the first four of them sharpening my axe." Right. So this is a perfect introduction to both penetration testing and the reconnaissance phase. So reconnaissance, also known as information gathering, is arguably the most important of the four phases. So the more time you spend collecting information on your target, the more likely you are to be successful in the later phases, like in the scanning phase, exploitation, and post exploitation. So, ironically, Recon is also one of the most overlooked, underutilized, and misunderstood steps in penetration testing methodology today. So, it is possible that this phase is overlooked because newcomers are never formally introduced to the concept. So, its rewards or how the result of good information gathering can be vital in later steps. So it is also possible that this phase is overlooked because it is the least technical and often the least exciting. So oftentimes people who are new to hacking tend to view this phase as boring and unlearning, or unchallenging also. So nothing could be further from the truth. So although it is true that there are very few good automated tools that can be used to complete reconnaissance. Once you understand the basics, it is like an entirely new way of looking at the world. So a good information gathering is made up of equal parts that hackers, social engineers, and private investigators. So the absence of well-defined rules of engagement also distinguishes this phase from all others. So this is in stark contrast to the remaining steps in our methodology. So, for example, when we discuss the scanning phase, so there is a specific order and a clear series of steps that need to be followed in order to properly port scan a target. But learning how to conduct a digital reconnaissance is a valuable skill for anyone living in today's world. So, for penetration testers and the hackers, basically. Uh, uh, so the penetration testing world is filled with great examples and stories of how the good Reconan single-handedly allowed the testers to fully compromise a network or a system. So let us just consider one example. That assume we have two different criminals, uh, so who are planning to rob a particular bank. So let us see the first scenario. The criminal buys a gun and runs into the first bank. He finds a link and hands up, "Give me all your money." So it is not hard to imagine that the scene would be completely chaos, and even if the bungling burglar managed to get away, it probably would not take long for the police to find him and arrest him and send him to the prison, right? So, in contrast, so this is the nearly every Hollywood movies in existence today, where criminals spend, in the second scenario, months of time uh, uh, for the planning, scheming, organizing, and reviewing details before the heist. So they spend time getting weapons anonymously, planning escape routes, and reviewing schematics of the building. So they visit the bank to determine the positions of the security cameras and make note of the guards who are working there and what are their shiftings, and determine when the bank has the most money or is the most vulnerable, at what time it is most vulnerable. So clearly the second criminal has the better chance of getting away with the money. So it should be obvious that the difference between these two examples is preparation and homework. So hacking and penetration testing are the same. So you cannot just get an internet protocol address and start running Metasploit. So just recall the example used to bring the in the beginning of this session. You had been assigned to a complete a penetration test, but a complete a penetration test, but were given very little information to go on, just like bulb security. So as a matter of fact, you are given only the company's name, that is one word, bulb security. So the $1 million question for every aspiring hacker is, how do I go from a single company name to owning the systems inside the network? So when a pen tester or when we begin, we know virtually nothing about the organization. So we do not know their website, physical address, or number of employees working in that company. So we do not know their public IP addresses or the internal IP schemes, that private IP addresses. So we know nothing about the technology deployed or operating systems which they are using on their end devices, or the defense mechanism which they are using in that. So what is the first step? So in the step one, we begins by conducting a thorough search of public information. So some organizations call this as your open source intelligence, or OSINT. So the great thing about this phase is that in most cases we can gather a significant amount of data without ever sending a single packet to the target. So, although it should be pointed out that some tools or techniques used in Reconnaissance do in fact send information directly to the target. So, it is important to know the difference between which tools do and which tools do not touch the target. So there are two main goals in this phase, in reconnaissance phase. The first one is we need to gather as much of as information. We need to gather as much information, as much of as possible information about the target. And second, we need to sort through all the information gathered and create a list of attackable IP addresses or uniform resource locators, that URL. So in this session, we are mainly talk about this gathering the information. But in our first chapter, or in the first lecture, it was pointed out that a major difference between black hat and white hat attackers is authorization. So step one provides us with a primary example of this, that your boss got the information about the bulb security and done all the proper authorization process. So both the type of hackers, it may be black hat or white hat, the hackers conduct the exhaustive reconnaissance on their targets. Unfortunately, malicious hackers are bound by neither scope nor authorization. So, when ethical hackers conduct research, they are required to stay within the confines of the test, that we said it as your what is the scope. So during the information gathering process, it is confined, it is not unheard of for a hacker to uncover a valuable system that is related to the target but not owned by the target. So even if the related target could provide access into the original organization without prior authorization, a white hat hacker is not allowed to use or explore this opportunity, or not allowed to use and explore these options also. So for example, let us assume that you are doing a penetration test against the bulb security company, and you determine that their web server is outsourced or managed by a third party. So if you find a serious vulnerability on the customer's website, like bulbsecurity.com, then you must ignore it. But if you find a serious vulnerability on the customer's website, but you have not been explicitly authorized to test and use the website, you must ignore it. The black hat attackers are bound by no such rules and will use any means possible to access the target systems. So in most cases, because you were not authorized to test and examine these outside systems, you will not be able to provide a lot of details. However, your final report must include as much information as possible about any systems that you believe put the organization at risk. So, to be successful at reconnaissance, you must have a strategy. So, nearly all facets of the information gathering leverage the power of the internet. So, typically, the strategy needs to include both active and the passive reconnaissances. Okay, so the active reconnaissances that includes interacting directly with the target. So it is important to note that during this process the target may record our IP address and log our activity. So this has a higher likelihood, likelihood of being detected if we are attempting to perform a penetration test on in a stealthy fashion. So it is very important. This is active reconnaissance. Then comes to your passive reconnaissance, that makes use of the vast amount of information available on the web. So, when we are conducting passive reconnaissance, we are not interacting directly with the target, and as such, the target has no way of knowing, recording, or logging our activity. So, as mentioned, the goal of a reconnaissance is to collect as much information as possible on your target. So, at this point in the penetration test, no details should be overlooked, regardless of how innocuous it may seem. So, while you are gathering information, it is important to keep your data in a central location. Uh, uh, so, whenever possible, it is helpful to keep the information in electronic format. So, this allows for quick and accurate searches later on. So, digital records can be easily sorted, edited, copied, imported, prawned, and mined. So, even so, every hacker is a bit different, and there are still some penetration testers who perform this penetration testing. They prefer to print out all the information they gather. So each piece of paper is carefully cataloged and stored in a folder. So, if you are going to use the traditional paper method, be sure to carefully organize your records. So, paper based information gathering binders on a single target can quickly grow to several hundred pages. So, in most cases, the first activity is to locate the target's website. So, in our example, we would use a search engine to look for the bulb security company. Right. So, this is the important one. We'll discuss how we are going to work on the website of your bulb security tester for the for gathering the information.